Interference with public duties. What does that even mean? Is there a way that you can defend your interference with public duties case? Hi, I'm Jeff Hampton with the Hampton Law Firm. I want to welcome you to our YouTube channel, and today I want to talk about a crime that very few people know what it's called, but if you've been arrested for it, you know what it's all about. I'm going to talk to you about interference with public duties. And by the way, if you wait around to the end of this video, I'll also give you a free ebook, What to Do If You've Been Charged with a Crime in Texas. Okay, now what if a police officer is claiming that you interfered with some type of investigation or maybe an arrest process or something along those lines? It's possible that you may have been charged with the misdemeanor crime of interference with public duties. Now, what if you did nothing wrong? Here's the problem. This is the issue that comes up. What if you were not doing anything other than maybe making the police officer a little uncomfortable? One of the best examples of this is when a police officer becomes angry at someone recording an arrest. In fact, there have been some recent issues that have arisen with this, where an officer doesn't like someone recording that arrest on their phone. Many times what will happen is someone will see a friend of theirs being arrested and maybe they feel like they're being treated a little aggressively or they don't like the direction that the arrest is going. So the friend will pull out the phone and start recording them and start becoming a little concerned about the encounter. Well, what ends up happening? The police officer sees that person recording the encounter, and what do? They turn around and tell them to immediately turn off their phone, and they tell them if they don't, they're going to arrest them. Now, is this true? Can the police officer actually do this? That is precisely why we need to take the time to examine the crime of what type of action would qualify as an illegal act, thereby allowing one to have probable cause to be arrested for interference with public duties. Now, if you've been arrested for this, it's important to understand, first and foremost, you don't have to prove anything. The state of Texas, through the district attorney's office, must prove each and every element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. So if you have a very experienced and aggressive criminal defense attorney, that attorney may be able to take the specific facts of your case and establish some reasonable doubt, thereby giving you some leverage to get a good result on your case. Now let's talk for a moment about what the law says. Under Texas Penal Code, section 38.15, the district attorney's office will be required to prove the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. If you, with criminal negligence, disrupt, impede, or otherwise interfere with a peace officer while the peace officer is performing a duty or exercising authority imposed or granted by law. Number two, if you interfere with a person who is employed to provide emergency medical services, including the transportation of ill or injured persons while the person is performing that duty. Number three, if you interrupt a firefighter while that firefighter is fighting a fire or investigating the cause of a fire, or the animal of under the supervision of a peace officer, corrections officer, or jailer, if the person knows the animal is being used for law enforcement, corrections, prison, jail security, or investigative purposes. So there's a few others that go along with this as well. Animal control. Essentially, if you have someone that is performing a public duty and is employed by the government, particularly if they're a police officer, firefighter, emergency personnel, animal control, those type of situations, if you interfere with their ability to do their job, now that's where it becomes a little subjective. If you interfere with them, then they can potentially charge you with this crime. Now, what are the criminal consequences for an interference with public duties conviction? Well, under Texas law, interference with public duties is a Class B misdemeanor punishable by up to 180 days in jail and up to a $2,000 fine. Now, if you are convicted of interference with public duties, a judge or a jury could assess a term of probation up to 2 years if they put you on a probation, and they could require you to perform certain community service hours, classes, get in contact with a probation officer once a month. So the point of it is you don't want that. No one wants to be able to have to be monitored for 2 years. So let's talk about a few possible defenses. These are some of the things that whoever you choose to retain as your criminal attorney, you need to go over some of these issues related to interference with public duties. Number one, here's one that everyone kind of has. It's almost become something that everyone is afraid of. It's almost legend status that's out there. Is it against the law to warn someone about a speed trap? And so this is one of the things that people bring up all the time. The Texas Penal Code specifically states that it is a defense to the crime of interference with public duties if the interference was done to warn a motorist that a police officer was attempting to enforce Title VII of the Texas Transportation Code. In other words, catch them in a speed trap. So let's say they're out there trying to catch someone in a speed trap, and if you decide that you want to warn other fellow motorists, and you know people do this all the time, right? Flash their lights at the other person, tell them, hey, watch out, there's a speed trap coming up. If a police officer were, for example, let's do a hypothetical, what if a police officer were to pull you over and start questioning you about why you are flashing your lights at the motorists? Was it your intent to warn others about the presence of that police officer running radar? If so, there's no reason for you to be ashamed to tell that police officer that is exactly what you were doing, because it is not against the law to do so in Texas. Now, I've heard people tell me all kinds of stuff, that they're afraid to do that. They're afraid they're going to end up getting in trouble for that. It is a defense. You are not interfering with public duties by warning someone about that, okay? Now, let's talk, this is where we get a little bit more specific here. What about if the so-called interference with public duties was not anything physical action involved, but instead was speech only? The Texas Penal Code spells out that it is a defense to the crime of interference with public duties if your conduct with the police officer. And what is that? Let's say he's claiming that you interrupted him, disrupted him, impeded him, or interfered with him in some way. If that conduct was consisted of speech only. For example, what if a police officer became upset with you because you were arguing with him? We've seen this happen with a client when a client becomes very upset about what they believe may be an invalid search warrant, where the officer is there wanting to execute a search warrant. The client's very upset, believing that it's an invalid warrant. Would this be considered interference with public duties? In this instance, your speech is protected, regardless of whether it interfered with what the officer wanted to hear or not. Okay? Now, back to our example at the very beginning of this discussion, is it illegal for someone to record someone's arrest? Let's say you're there and you're holding your phone and you're recording your friend being arrested and it's concerning you. Did this constitute interference with public duties under Texas criminal law? The answer is no. Here's why. The key to this particular example was that the friend only recorded the interaction, and did not take more active actions against the police officer. For example, if that friend had recorded the incident but also stood between the officer, okay? Think about that for a second. Let's say that they stood between the officer and they were recording at the same time. Then that would be different, because now the officer would either have to go through or around you in order to be able to make sure and take care of that arrest. So as a practical matter, here's the problem. Many police officers will not care. They'll choose to arrest you anyway. They will not like the fact that you did not comply with their requirement that you quit recording. And so many times you will see a police officer that will choose to go ahead and arrest you because they're angry about the situation. And listen, you can say, well, my case should be able to be dismissed. That's fine, but understand in the meantime what's happening. You're going to jail, you're having to post a bond, you're having to hire an attorney to be able to show that you've done nothing wrong. So, how can a criminal attorney help you with getting your interference with public duties case dismissed? Well, you need to make sure that you have an attorney. I'm going to give you some advice on this. Any attorney that you hire needs to have these three goals in mind. Number one, there needs to be a dismissal that takes place. I mean, you don't want to go to jail. Let me just say that. No jail sentence. Number two, you don't want to be convicted. Number three, you want to be able to get it off your record, okay? So you want to make sure that you're going to be speaking to an attorney that can articulate some of these defenses, break down the law related to your facts, apply it to the law, give you an idea of what the plan of action needs to be on your case. All right, now let's say this is your first offense. You say, I've never been in trouble before in my whole life. Well, that's where you start getting into multiple ways to get your case dismissed. Number one, your case could be dismissed for lack of evidence. We've already talked about this. If you have a valid defense, your defense attorney may be able to go in there and convince that prosecutor to just dump that case. All right, number two, what about a conditional dismissal? Even if your actions were a little on the line, maybe you did stand in between the officer. Well, a conditional dismissal would require you to potentially do some community service hours, maybe take some type of class. In exchange for that, your case could potentially be dismissed. There may also be, number three, a diversion program option. Depending upon your age, if you're a first-time offender, you might qualify for a first-time or some type of first-time diversion program where it allows you to get your case dismissed and expunged from your record. But finally, you always have the right to a jury trial. Listen, if the police mistreated you in this situation, you didn't do anything wrong. If the prosecutor's not seeing it for what it is, you can always take your case to a jury trial. In that situation, you would have to have 6 jurors unanimously agree and come to a decision that you violated the law. And so this is something you obviously need to speak to your criminal defense attorney about. Now listen, I hope this was of help to you today. If you or a loved one has been charged with interference with public duties, particularly some of the facts I'm talking about here, it's important that you get a consultation and that you speak with an experienced lawyer. I want to offer that to you today. If your case is out of the Dallas, Fort Worth, North Texas area, I want to offer you a free consultation. And the way to do that is to contact the Hampton Law Firm. You see this number that's above me on the screen. It's been up there the whole time. Contact us and we'll be happy to give you a free consultation, go over the facts of your case, see what we can do to help you. By the way, I promised you a free ebook. If you look down below, take a look at the ebook that I've provided you that talks about what to do if you have been charged with a crime in Texas. I'll be happy to send that right over to your email address. And listen, I want to thank you for joining us on our YouTube channel today. Look forward to seeing you on our next video.